Okay, I'm going to go over the fingering charts again here, kind of step by step. So if you're confused on anything, hopefully this will kind of help you out. Again, I'll kind of follow my mouse around and I'll be talking through how I go about each one of these. And again, the purpose of these is to show how a key and the scale influence your finger patterns on the instrument. And every time you play a song here in class or an exercise or boot camp, you need to be sure that whatever key you see matches the scale you're playing and the finger pattern on your instrument. So I'll go through one on each instrument here. So we'll start with the violin. This is a sharp key. So the trick with a sharp key is the last sharp, reading from left to right like a book, will be the seventh note of your scale. So because this is an F sharp right here, I put an F sharp in the seventh note of the scale. Since a scale goes in alphabetical order, it's pretty easy to figure out the rest of the notes. Now whatever is my first note of the scale is what we call the tonic note, and that becomes my major key. For purposes you don't need right now, the sixth note of the scale is going to be what we call the relative minor. But now here's what's important. In this major scale, actually in every major scale, the same whole step, half step pattern exists. And the half steps in every major scale are between the third and fourth note and between the seventh and first note. And this is going to be true no matter what the key signature is. This pattern will always be true. So once I know my scale, my tonic, and my half steps, I go over to my finger chart here and I'm just going to put each note as I go across the scale where it would go on the string. So if I start on my G string, and again I want to indicate if I can play that open string, all I do is look for it over here in the scale. If I see it, I circle it. So I can definitely play the G since I'm in the key of G. My next note is going to be A, and since it's 1 to 2, that'll be a whole step. So I put that there. And the PowerPoint kind of does this all for me. But from A to B will also be a whole step, so I skip a circle, go to the next one. B and C are my third and fourth notes, so they have to be touching each other. And then I have a space from C to D, or from 4 to 5. I'm going to do the same process starting on the D string, which I can play because it's in my scale. And then see, it fills it out for me, but I can definitely see that D to E is going to be a whole step. E to F sharp is going to be a whole step, and then F sharp to G is going to be a half step again. The same thing now will happen on the A string, except as you'll notice here, I have a different half step. Not my second and third fingers don't touch. Instead, my first and second do, and this is because of the rule here that B and C have to always be touching because they're the third and fourth notes of my scale. The E string is going to actually look the same because between F sharp and G, I have to have a half step because that's my 7 and 1. So I can always go back and check my work and know I did it right if after I go through all my strings, only B and C and F sharp and G are touching. Let's say I got done and this E here was in this square or this circle. Well, now something's wrong because D and E are not supposed to touch. Those are my fifth and sixth notes of the scale. Those don't touch. So this is correct because it's followed the same pattern that was over here in my scale. Let's do one with the viola here, and this is also a flat key. If it's a flat key, the rule is just slightly different than the sharp key rule. Instead of going to the 7th scale degree, my last flat always goes right in the middle to my 4th scale degree. And so B flat, since that's a B right there, B flat is number 4. If I know where B flat is, I can easily go in alphabetical order around the scale to fill in the rest of the notes. And obviously here, since my first note here is F, I'm in the key of F major. Take a second and guess what the minor is. Hopefully you guessed D because it's number 6. And my half steps, again, just like in G major, are going to be between 7 and 4 and 3 and 1. This is true of every key. Now I'm going to go over to my strings over here. Since I'm a viola, I now have a low C string, which I can play because it's the 5th note of my scale. And then if I go up the string, the only notes that will touch on the C string will be E and F. So I get this 1, 2, 3, 4 finger pattern with 2 and 3 touching. On the G string, it's going to be slightly different because if I go up from A to B flat, that's my 3rd and 4th notes, those have to be touching. So you see I have a different finger pattern on the C than I do on the G. On the D string, I'll have the same finger pattern as the G because my E and F have to be touching. Those are my 7 and 1. When I go to the A string now, this is going to get even funkier because my A and B flat have to touch. Since my A is an open string, in order to make it a half step, my B flat has to be touching it, so it becomes a low first finger. And if you look, my finger pattern on the A string is going to be all whole steps, but I'm in half position because of this B flat. So I once again double check my work. I look for my half steps. They should be A and B flat, E and F. If there's any other half step combinations, something went wrong. We'll move to the low strings. Here I'm actually going to do the key of C major. You have to memorize this because it's no sharps and no flats. But C major, again, just memorize that. No sharps, no flats, C major. But because it's a major scale, I'm going to have the same whole step, half step combinations I did in the other two. So 1 and 7, 3 and 4. Again, I'm going to go over here to my string and just start putting this pattern onto each string that I see. So I can clearly play my open C. I have D, E, and F will be touching because of 3 and 4. Nothing else will touch. On the G string, I'll have a similar pattern. Again, B and C will touch. Nothing else. I go to the D string. The only notes that should touch on the D string should be E and F because they're 3 and 4. And if I go to the A string, again, only B and C are touching. So when I get done with that, I look at my work and I see I've done everything right. E and F, B and C. E and F, B and C. So everything's good there. We'll do an example here quick on bass then. So again, I have a sharp key, so this is going to immediately mean that I'm putting my last sharp in the 7th scale degree. So that's what happens. I work my way around the scale. I know I'm in the key of G because it's my first scale degree. 1, 7, 3, and 4 are my half steps. I come over here. Now again, the basses only have so many tapes. That's different if you're not a bass player. So actually only 2 of my strings work out to have half steps because I don't need any half steps unless I start shifting and going higher on the instrument. But as you guys hopefully saw, none of these keys ever had the same finger pattern on all 4 strings. Going back in here looking at this one, notice on the cello, on the lower 2 strings, 3 and 4 were touching. On the upper 2 strings, 1 and 2 were touching. Go backwards really quick here. On the viola, look at this. We had 3 different finger patterns in the key of F major. 2 and 3 were touching on the C, 1 and 2 on the G and D, open and 1, because that low 1 B flat in F major. And in the violins, we had 2 and 3 touching on the G and the D. We had 1 and 2 touching on the A and the E. So again, hopefully this helps you kind of get started on doing your finger packets. Obviously, you might think it gets more complicated when you add sharps and flats, but it really doesn't because this same pattern, this 1, 7, 3, 4 whole step, half step pattern exists in every key. The only way you're going to make a mistake if you get more sharps and flats is just because you're not putting the notes in the right spot over here. And again, that's why I give each of your instruments, hold on here, oops. I have to go find one of the guide pages. Okay, so here's like a viola guide page. This is showing you where your fingers go if you just put them on the tapes we give you in 6th grade. And as you can already see, here you have an F sharp on the D, here you have an F natural on the C. Clearly these tapes don't give you a proper key. Oh, there's a bell. School's out. Hope this helps. See you guys later.